All right, we'll let some folks trickle in here from our waiting room. As folks are coming in, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for joining us today. I hope everyone is well. Today's session is actually one that I was really excited about because Management One is often known, especially across our client base, for some of the more widely distributed verticals that we work in, apparel and footwear. But what they don't know is that our process also applies to many professional sports teams, major college programs, and today's session is really going to be geared exactly towards that particular vertical. And that's why we titled it, How to Win in Sports Merchandise Business. We're coming up to the middle of Q4 here, and we've assembled this panel specifically to help our pro sports and our college sports retailers really set a solid strategy, get some new insights and ideas to set themselves up for success in 2023. So I want to give a quick thank you to our panelists for joining us. Today we have Cristina McAloon. She's the Senior Manager of Buying for the Las Vegas Raiders. Thanks, Cristina. And Kristen Hivik, who is the Director of Sales for the Cleveland Cavaliers. We have Jace Lipstein, CEO of Grungy Gentlemen, and Mr. Matt Altman, CEO of Sportiqe. And leading the conversation is our own Director of Sales here at Management One, Dane Cohen. Before I kick it over to you, Dane, though, I did want to let folks know this is going to be a live Q&A presentation here. So we want to hear from the audience. If you have some insights, if you have questions or anything that we discuss, we're going to set aside a little bit of time at the end for live Q&A. So right down there at the bottom of the Zoom window, there's a Q&A panel. Please submit any questions in there and we'll be happy to address them to the panel. Dane, I will turn the stage over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nico. So, I've been looking forward to this conversation as well. And, I know that we have a really exciting mix. And I think the nice part about this conversation is we're going to kind of hear a few different perspectives. And, we're lucky enough to work with a majority of the panel as clients of Management One, but really just kind of getting a better understanding of how everyone is approaching this current moment. We're definitely in a time that has seen a lot of opportunity, but also some uncertainty. So I think everyone's voice is super important to gaining just a better perspective and handle on how we could all kind of find success as we close out 2022 and look forward to 2023, if we can believe it. So Cristina, I'm going to jump in with you, and I promise this question has nothing to do with current performance of the Raiders, but I thought we had a really good conversation about emotion versus performance, and really how you look at your assortment in those terms. So, when it comes to product merchandising, how do you find the right balance between ensuring that you're going to have product that you can draw upon the momentum and the performance of the team versus really kind of getting some emotion out there and some real behind the purchases and the fans? What does that look like in terms of your product assortment, really balancing that out?
That's a great question. For me, the creative aspect of what we do is a focal point versus some of the metrics, right? We can talk all day about the forecast, the IMU targets, the turn, right, and sell through. But if we aren't building loyalty and trust and engaging with our number one priority, I honestly feel like at the end of the day, it means nothing. Which is why getting to know the fans and building an emotional product strategy is really my go-to. So whether that's through the graphic and the silhouette or a specific brand, it all really comes down to the merchandising, marketing, and storytelling that we're doing on social media. I know you made me blush with that performance aspect, right? Because as we all know, the Raiders are currently 2-6, but we're still seeing select results at retail that are exceeding last year, really due to what our team has kind of put together based on that emotional factor and what our fans have kind of been saying they wanted to see in the store. So whether that's exclusive collaborations with Born and Raised, working through a specific exclusive product like Design Lab, where we deconstructed our logo and offered them something new that they hadn't seen before, celebrating the history of our team, right? That's something that we kind of haven't really played into in a couple of years. And so utilizing LA, utilizing Oakland with historic brands like Mitchell and Ness is something that we have really tapped into. Going vintage, right? And talking about the 90s when the Raiders were really kind of becoming very mainstream, and utilizing brands like Starter, and then infusing bling, right? Because we're in Las Vegas, and that's what a lot of the women want to see when they come in the store. It doesn't necessarily have to be everything, but it's these little moments, right, that you end up, kind of tapping into. There's nothing like being there at game day with the fans and seeing them just have that reaction, right? Seeing them get super excited about something. That you've then done kind of your job, and nobody's thinking about the sell-through that you're getting on that, or if you raise the retail and you got a 60 IMU, right? Like that's not what's going through your head. It's that joy that you're bringing the fans. Like that's our number one job. So that emotion to me and bringing that all kind of full circle is really number one.
Yeah, and Cristina, just to follow up there, in a way though, it really does tie into the metrics, right? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that the way that you view it from a planning perspective, right? Some of those, the vintage collections, any capsules that's drawing upon maybe the bling of it all, right? There's probably some more consistency in how you could plan based on some of those collections versus, how you could perhaps plan on performance, which you're not in control over. So does that factor in from a, planning units perspective and actually booking dollars when you're looking at your product assortment? How does that vary?
It basically, for us, it's basically kind of looking at this year versus last year and kind of what we're actually capable of doing in terms of expanding certain things, right? So for me, it kind of starts at the department level, for headwear, for instance, is a great example. That's where I felt we had the most opportunity coming off of last year. So when we incorporate different collaborations like Born and Raised, knowing that we're going to be able to do exclusive like Design Lab, that's where you work with planning, work with someone like M1, and you say, this is where I know the opportunity is going to be. This is where I think we need to take the forecast up. Let's make sure we're, looking at the receipts and planning this out accordingly, And so it really is kind of looking at what the, product is that's coming in, knowing that you're kind of taking it where, you see the opportunity and then playing accordingly based on the department.
Yeah, and Kristen, I think that you'll share some good insight here as well, and that's really, how do we balance, staying adaptable in season and really responding to business, but also we want to kind of have a roadmap set out in front of us, right? So we're booking dollars out, months and months in advance. So how do you approach that balance between, really having a plan in place versus staying adaptable?
Yeah, so I think we all know in sports, we're always on the roller coaster, right? So some days you can be up, other times your team can be down, kind of to Christina's point. So I think a lot of just starts with planning, right? So really, setting your inventory goals, setting your department goals, knowing what your forecast is going to be for the year, but also knowing that might change. So I think that you really have to be in tune with the financials overall. And really, really know your trends, what's driving your business, what are you marking down, like really be in tune with that. So that way, where you can make the adjustments on the fly. I think another piece of this is just really having a strong set of relationships with your suppliers. So, when you're up, where to get product. And we recently kind of went through something like this where our roster changed over the last few months, and, our business is different than we anticipated. So we were able to kind of call on our go-to suppliers to get what we needed. And it's been very beneficial. And I think that those relationships are valuable when you're up and also when you're down. I think that's, those relationships are where you're able to hold product, make adjustments, and just build that overall relationship with that supplier. So that way, in the future, when you need more product, like they're also there. So, they're there during the good and the bad, and it all kind of works out. So that's just kind of how we've stayed adaptable on our side. I think another thing that our CMO always says, and he would laugh if I said this and he heard it, but he always says, be big wave ready. So be ready for something to happen. Even if it doesn't, be ready for it. So know that in the back of your head, like something could change drastically, and how are you going to react to that? How are you going to prepare yourself for that moment?
Yeah, and I love that, really having a handle on who your go-to suppliers are and who can kind of be there in a moment of need, especially with the unpredictability of, those kind of big moments that happen. So on that, what's kind of the state right now? I know that obviously supply chain has been such a focus over the last year since 2020. What's this looking like right now on your end? How have you been, managing supply chain pain points?
Yeah, so I think kind of going back to suppliers, you gotta be in tune with the suppliers that have the stock, right? And I think like it comes to a lot of planning on their side as well. But some of the, the core product and the bigger companies, I'm not going to mention any of them, but might not have what you need. And so how are you kind of filling those dollars with different product that the fans want? Because the supply chains are still an issue right now. We all know that. So I think just really being in tune with the product that is available, like how are you maximizing that at this moment?
Yeah, and Matt, I would assume that you definitely have a very unique perspective on it, because you're seeing this from both ends. Not only are you planning your own inventory, obviously, but you also need to worry about being able to kind of react and service your retailers. So, how do you manage that process and really the risk versus opportunity?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think, our big kind of like guiding principle around inventory management is just that. How do we maximize opportunities and minimize risk? And when we're making decisions, we're looking at both of those areas. And for us, when we saw what was happening around supply chain, we had the ability to actually get in front of it because of we had a very strong supply chain. We actually control 50% of our supply chain, and the fact that we do all of our decoration domestically and things of that nature. So we actually took a strong position on inventory and tried to stay ahead. So where we would normally just flow stuff in month to month, we started keeping 3-4 months worth of inventory on the front end to be able to support. And so we were able to actually grow through a lot of these supply chain challenges because we had product and we were able to deliver.
Yeah, that's a very interesting.
But it was risky. That was a risk, but if I can add to that for a second, we really though are calculated though in how we handle that. So we have core styles, and those are styles that we've identified over the years that we always want to have in stock. So we want to keep those styles in stock, certain colors, and so we manage our open to buys accordingly. Then we have seasonal styles, and those are going to be more seasonal. They're going to be more unique to that season, spring, summer, fall, winter. And those we may not stock that much. We may just bring in what's booked, have some extra on the shelf, but that's really it. We're going to take our risks on what's been tried and true around our inventory.
Yeah, and Jace, I want to bring you into this kind of topic, and I think that for me personally, I always look to you as someone who is kind of ahead of trends and really knows what's up. So what's that balance look like for you between kind of tried and true styles with pushing the needle forward in terms of design and giving people something new that maybe they didn't even know that they wanted?
Yeah, absolutely. So in, the sports licensing industry, there's sort of two types of products that most product falls under. One is loud and proud, where the product is sort of very fan focused and a little bit in your face. And there's a home for that, and that product sells. So I want to make that very clear. Recently, as like the menswear and men's fashion industry is just sort of grown, so has the interests of the consumers. And there's now become a little bit of a space for more elevated product. And it's not only market specific anymore, it's pretty much across the board. We've worked with large cities on this and smaller cities on this. And the one thing that, and I think you touched upon it earlier, Dane, which was spot on, is, when you can create an emotional connection with the customer, that's the way to go. And you can do that through elevated products. So the silhouettes might be more wearable and versatile to maybe take you from, let's say, game day to a meeting or to a date. But I always like to add in subtle details that really connect with that consumer. So with a baseball reference, or maybe even two, we worked with the New York Mets and the New York Yankees, and on the back of our fitted hats, we also did this in snapbacks as well. But just to give you an example, on the back of the fitted, where the normal Major League Baseball logo is put on, we did a Bronx Bombers riff on their logo. And then we also did an amazing, which obviously correlates to the Mets. And what that really did was, is we wanted to evoke emotion. When a customer comes up to our product, they're obviously seeing a lot of product that is, I wouldn't call it the same, but that is team focused. So how do we stand out from the rest? And generally, when a customer sees something that, whether it connects them to their childhood, their parents, hanging out with their friends when they saw a game, that could definitely make a purchasing decision. As far as silhouettes and stuff go, there's definitely more of an appetite for consumers to wear more elevated product, like we said. And, I know I might have mentioned this to you earlier, but with our product, we focus on fit. And I have a saying, if you don't got fit, you don't got shit. And that is something I live by, especially with our product. That is the difference from, really creating product that's versatile. Some items that we've seen that have done very, very well are matching sets with sweatsuits. Not because I'm wearing this right now, but hoodies with no drawstring, just a little bit different than everything else that is in the normal assortment. And there are other items too, but hopefully that's an answer that you're kind of looking for.
Yeah, and I listen, I think that emotional drive is super important. I mean, when you first start working with the team and when you're looking at product, what are kind of the first things you go to find that connection? Is it the city? Is it creating it around a player? I mean, what has kind of worked in terms of driving that emotional connection?
Sure. Well, obviously, if you are able to work with athletes, it's hero worship. So obviously fans connect with that, but that isn't a given. So when I work with any license, I really try to evoke the culture of that city through the product. And that's very important. A lot of people are proud where they live, and that. That's why New Yorkers wear the NY hat everywhere, and even other people wear it as well. It's almost, the licensing logo for your team is almost a badge of honor, and you have to treat it as such. And when you're able to, remember when I was saying about like Bronx Bombers and Amazons, those are sort of details that really do connect you to that franchise. But I also think it's very important to tie it into the city as well. I can give you a quick example. So we did a runway show with the San Antonio Spurs at the AT&T Center. It did pretty well, but first off, I'm sure consumers aren't necessarily used to seeing a runway show when they're going to grab a hot dog. So there is that for sure. And we had, good looking models. They had which I'm going to get into. We played with their Fiesta color scheme, which really attaches the color scheme of certain things with around their city. So people love that. And, you mix that in with elevated product and a few other things, we had music and everything like that. It really told a story. And what I mean by that is, our music was definitely focused on local talent and also, I guess, songs that would connect with that market. And that even went down to even how we built a set for the runway show. So always when you can evoke emotion, especially attaching it to the culture of the market, you have a home run.
Nice. And Matt, you talked about flow for a minute, and Cristina and Kristen, I want to turn this over to you. But when we talk about flow, how important is it? And Management One, it's one of our biggest philosophies, that flowing in fresh goods and giving your customer and the end consumer something new and fresh to sink their teeth into. How are you planning newness in your assortments, that the customer is always having something new to really be able to kind of get behind and get excited about?
You want me to take that first? Sure. So for us, I talked about core styles, and then we have seasonal styles. And so those twice a year, we're coming out with completely new collections that are completely on trend and new to what's happening in terms of fashion and the marketplace. And so we're already working 18, 24 months in advance of what those seasonal styles are going to be. So we can be presenting those collections to buyers, and they know, okay, these are going to be what's on trend from that season. We also do seasonal colors with our core styles as well. And so there's that fresh and uniqueness. And then the buyer also knows, hey, Sportiqe has our core styles. We know that they're going to have these, tried and true styles year in and year out. So using Kristen as an example, she knows, okay, in a hot market situation, if something's coming up with her team and she's needing some new apparel to hook up with what's happening from a hot market, she knows she can turn to Sportiqe, and here's the collection of styles that she can get today. But then we also know, hey, there's new styles that'll come later. But so we kind of capture both of those scenarios. Another thing that we do is really take a good, better, best model with our collection, and really that best category is going to be more of the custom unique styles. They're going to be a little more expensive and a little more unique, and that's maybe going to touch maybe 2 out of 10 of our customers, where most of our core styles is get hit 9 out of 10 of our customers.
Yeah, and Kristen, Matt name checked you, so I'm gonna have you jump in there. How do you view this? How do you work together with vendors like Sportiqe to really drive freshness in your assortment?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, freshness is everything. I would say in pretty much every sports venue, you have a lot of the same people coming back every game. And so you always need something fresh in the store, because you really want them coming back to see what's next. And I think the other piece of that too is you got to tell them about it. So that's where digital marketing and marketing in general is just very important in this space. Because if you have it, it's great, but you need to tell people you have it, right? So there's a few components there, but I would say we try to plan out year over year just a piece of our open to buy that is just fashion product versus the core product, which Matt kind of touched on. But you always want to know what's available from vendors that you can bring in that's fresh, so that way you can trace some of the trends to kind of go along with that. So you want to have the freshness, but you always want to make sure you're on trend with what's going on in the marketplace.
Yeah. Now, Cristina, I kind of want to ask you, we were briefly touching upon before we jumped on this call, really kind of the difference between top-down planning versus bottom-up. And I know that you're working right now with Management One, and one of the things that you said, and I'd love for you to expand on it, is really having someone to watch your blind side a little bit and be able to kind of spot things in your numbers. Can you speak a little bit to more of that relationship and how that really works, in season?
Yes. It's true. And actually, I mean, to touch on what we were just speaking about, for the Raiders, we're operating 12 additional, 12 locations year round. So, and then in addition to the shops that we have in the hotels. So, and then in season, there's upwards of 30. So, it's, the newness factor is significant for us as well. But, to go back to your point, the tops down, bottoms up, for me, I'm very much tops down. Like I'm starting at the, initial P&L, looking at where we're at this year versus last year, diving into department, then I'm diving into the flow, looking at the receipts, every single month, where do we need to be from a capacity standpoint, right? And then I'm diving into the categories and I'm diving into the brands. What M1 helps me do is they kind of take it a step further into that like subclass level and into the store level. And that's kind of why I mentioned how many locations we have, right? And, having the ability, for them to dial down, like deep down into the details for me, kind of helps us come together and be the best partners, right? Because I'm kind of saying like, here's what I'm seeing up here, and here's where I'm taking the assortment, and here's where I feel we have the most opportunity, and here's also where I'm nervous. Here, tell me what you're thinking, right? And then M1 kind of says like, well, here's the minutia, right? Let's kind of like talk through it. And so, it really is the best of both worlds. And I'm incredibly grateful for what we've been able to do over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and touching upon where we're nervous, right? I know that markdown strategies are something that's super important to, keeping that flow, because it's all, one continuous circle, right? If we have goods that are clogging up our inventory that we're just allowing to sit there, that's not healthy for any business. So Kristen, maybe you'll have some insight here in terms of kind of knowing when to fold it, right? Like when do you kind of look to using markdowns as a tool to kind of push your business forward?
And I think a lot of that also comes down to sometimes team performance, right? Because you could have a trade, you could, be on a long losing streak. And that's when you say, hey, you know what, I'm not moving as many goods as I'd like to right now. So how do we put some promotional strategies in place just to really maximize that? So the one thing that's very helpful in a lot of the management planning reports is just, seeing what your markdown dollars are and how can you use those? Because I think that's something that you don't always think about, because you don't want to mark down product, but you have to. Not everything's going to be a winner. As much as we want it to be, it's just not. So how do you really maximize those dollars and, get the old stuff out the door to get stuff brand new in the door that's actually going to sell?
Yeah, we have a saying that the only time markdowns are bad is if you don't learn from them, right?
Yep,
it's
absolutely.
a tuition paid for understanding your customer. So Jace, I want to talk a little bit about e-commerce. 2020 really shifted things in terms of, in many ways forcing the issue to online kind of has still permeated till today. In terms of a digital business and really kind of the marketing and how we can kind of pump up that area of business. Obviously, there's the retail outposts that are going to be, happening during the game, and that's, going to drive a lot of business. But what are you seeing in terms of e-commerce growth right now? Is there a real opportunity to kind of reach a whole new customer there?
Well, I think the girls could probably speak to this better than I could. However, where I used to see a lot of more local license deals really focus on driving traffic to the actual venue. Because of COVID, now a lot of teams are willing to sell it online. And my guess is that they're seeing great results from it. And that's why it keeps on coming up in conversation. So I think just sports teams in general are beefing up what they sell e-commerce as far as just quantities, which is a great thing. And as we all know, listen, hopefully nothing like this ever happens again. But if you're going to potentially run into, whether it be like a pandemic or something crazy in the world, it's always great to not be reliant on physical venues. So obviously by default, e-commerce is where I'm sure a lot of businesses are putting a lot of focus on, let alone just only apparel and accessories. So, you know, when you control your own store or situation and it's digital, and also you take home a bigger margin, I think it's something everyone has to consider. So that's my take on e-commerce growing.
Yeah, Kristen, has that kind of changed the landscape of your retail business?
You want to go first, Kristen?
Yeah, I can jump in here. So absolutely. So I think we learned a lot during COVID, and we actually it made us actually even split our e-com business to be it's just look at it in a completely different way, and to create our own strategies just around that business. And I will say that we've still seen growth in that area even without COVID. And we're going to continue to kind of develop those best practices and keep moving forward with that business and growing that. On the second side of that, it's also been very beneficial. Our team shop's actually going through a renovation right now. So, and it's not going to be open until February, which is definitely not ideal, but we're making the most of it. So just another piece of this, it's been very beneficial for us, is we've placed QR codes all over our arena for people to be able to just hit our website, you know, right away. You don't want to stand in line. We have the same product online. You know, if we're running a promotion for the night, we also have that product online as well. So that way fans are able to access it, even if they don't want to stand in line and they rather be in their seat for the game. So there's just been a lot of advantages for us having, you know, that run fully vertical internally, but just then also just adapting to the fan base that's outside of our region. They can't necessarily come to a game. Like, we want to make sure that our reach is there.
Yeah, and Kristen really touched on something there that you saw in the last couple of years, and it's blurring those lines between the in-store and the online experience. And we've seen a lot of our retail clients have experimented not only with QR codes, but with social media, and just having that experience available to the customer is huge. The other thing is, how do you build your online presence? You know, you think of your brick and mortar store, you often rotate merchandise front store, back store based on traffic, based on promotion. And a lot of people don't realize that the same attention needs to be paid to your online properties as well. What do you have above the fold? How is your navigational structure? How is it operating on mobile? Those are all considerations that are brand new for some retailers.
Yeah. So I love that, Nico, the mix of they're calling it phygital, the mix of digital. Digital. I love that little term. Matt, so, you know, with 2023 on the horizon, I mean, you're probably booking out goods, I mean, months, if not, you know, 12 months in. Can you take us into a little bit, you know, when you're sitting down with your team and really planning out that far in advance, and, you know, I'm speaking to management one as being part of that team. What does your kind of strategy look like when you're starting to kind of project out the landscape for the year ahead, and if not already looking scary enough into what 2024 could be?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is we actually always are looking 12 months out and looking at a rolling 12 months going forward. So even though, okay, we're about to go into 2023, we've been looking at 2023 since last March-ish, if you will. And so really looking at what's happening with our sales, looking what's happening, and where that momentum will carry into the following year. So we're always looking 12 months out. And I think what's great with working with management one is then it really forces us to always look at, okay, what's happening in sales? Are we matching sales to the inventory that we're holding and looking to book and things of that nature? And so what's happening now is, just as we're now budget planning, finalizing all our budgets for 2023, we're now making sure our sales forecast is lining up with our inventory forecast and what we're planning. And then we'll be able to start the year off completely fresh, and then we'll just keep the ball rolling in that regard.
Yeah, so speaking about 2023, I don't like to say this word lightly, but, you know, there's obviously, you can't open a any kind of news without hearing some talk of recession and uncertainty and what's going to happen with the economy. Cristina, is that something that you're taking into account right now? Or, I know we don't want to obviously lead any business in terms of fear, but is it factoring into any plans for you, or are you kind of staying true to what your data is telling you?
No, it absolutely is factoring into it. I mean, we are seeing, the sales in general, decline in general, not speaking about game day, but just in general, right? Speaking of the other stores that we have. And so I do think that, we've seen a shift, right? Coming from 21 to 22, right? Where everyone was coming off of COVID, everybody had, a little bit of additional money. They were really excited, right? To go shopping and to get out of the house. And then 22 has been a little bit of a different story, I feel like, right? It's been more about what do they need versus what do they want, right? And so I do think we're going to see a little bit more of that continue into 23. And so we do have to be cognizant of that when we're looking at the forecast and when we're looking at the open to buy plans. And so we are taking that into account. We are looking at it by location. And we are looking at it down to the department level as well. For me though, I think it's going to come down to where the bulk of the season, bulk of the year is, which is fall, and the performance, unfortunately, of the team, which is sports, right? So we'll see where we lie. But I think one of the things that Kristen can probably speak to too is all of this is kind of having an effect on the retails. Right. And that's kind of what we're kind of seeing shake out, right? Where the costs are increasing, retails are increasing. And so the units, right, then come down. So we're not expecting the same unit velocity based on where we're at with our average retail. So I think that from a retail perspective is kind of what we're looking at, right?
Right. That's a really interesting point.
And Dane, if I can interject, like where I was saying before, we were pretty aggressive in front loading inventory. Now we're really looking at 2023 of smoothing things out, be more fluid month to month, and not maybe take some of those big swings and carrying too much, knowing that it's going to be bumpy next year. I don't know what bumps are going to come, but they're going to come. And just kind of being prepared and be more nimble in that regard.
Yeah, Kristen, how's this factoring into your planning? And I emphasize the word planning because I think that the gut reaction sometimes in situations is like, well, throw my hands up, what can I really plan? But is it now more important than ever to kind of really be tuned in and honed in on kind of setting yourself up for success and, mitigating risk while still kind of tackling opportunities as aggressively as possible?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of really looking at your open to buy and saying, okay, what do I really need? Like, what do I need to pre-book versus what is the business I can chase? Because I think that'll really help you just manage your budget a little bit better. So, if there is a recession that occurs and you see your sales kind of drop down, you're able to kind of adapt to that situation a little bit. I think another piece of this too is something that we always try to do is, have product that is price pointed to, really up to really anybody. So, make the product accessible to people that, might not be able to spend a lot of money because they're already coming to the game. They're already spending a lot of money on tickets. So how do you create promotions, throughout the game that, creates an accessible price point, but you're also making your margin. So we do a program called Item of the Game for every single game where we do that. We have $15 t-shirts or $40 hooded sweatshirts that, the average fan could come and buy that not necessarily is buying a expensive jersey. So I think that's another piece of it too, is just really looking at your product mix and making sure you have the price points that, every fan could potentially buy into.
Yeah, and I just have one follow-up to that. And then I kind of want to turn it over to some Q&A, and I have a final question for everyone. But Kristen, are there any new kind of emerging product categories that you're excited about, whether it be kids or women's or pet? Are there any kind of new emerging areas that you really have your eye on?
So I think the one thing that we've obviously seen over the last few years is just how much crossover and unisex product there is between men's and women's. So how that's really changed our women's business is we've really put our dollars towards more fashion forward women's product, and kind of kept the basics in the men's space, knowing that that's where they're going to buy. So that's been pretty fun for us, just trying to dig into different brands. I think another piece is just really finding unique product and doing collaborations, which I know a few others have kind of touched on already, but that really keeps product fresh. It creates some emotion around it. It also potentially can support some local suppliers, which is also great. So I think just finding those unique collaborations just really helps too. So those are really like the two big buckets that we've kind of been focusing on over the last year.
Yeah, and speaking of collaboration, Jace, the king of collaboration over there, what's the how do we bring people together in the industry, right? Like how do we really make sure that the right-minded people are kind of getting in the same room and discussing some big ideas to push things forward?
Well, I think we have guys like you, so who are doing this today. So you're a person who connects people for sure. But business just in general is all about, of course, networking. And also when you deliver good product, what I should say is it's very important to also retain clients. Just getting in the door is amazing and, a huge accomplishment, but you really need to be reliable, I apologize, for your clients. And that really goes across more than just sports, but especially, with sports teams, they have a lot going on in their own house. And if we could, provide some stability and also exciting product. The one difference that I generally try to get involved with a little bit more than some suppliers is the marketing. And that helps also. So again, if you just, be good, be a good business partner, hopefully you'll be able to, continue to build relationships, and they might even introduce you to other people.
All right, awesome. And before we kind of jump to some Q&A, I know there are some questions out there, Nico, that are being asked. I thought we'd end on an optimistic note. What's everyone most excited about for holiday season? We're hopefully going into what will be a strong holiday season. Cristina, what are you excited about?
The gift guide, honestly, probably one of my favorite things throughout the year.
And that usually drives a lot of fan interest, and
it does throughout stores and e-commerce. So it's pretty significant for us.
All right, great. We'll all make sure to check that out. Matt, what's exciting you about holiday season?
Yeah, I think we have some really cool collaborations and collections dropping with some NBA teams in November, December that are going to be really, really cool to see. And then obviously for us, it's the best time for us to promote and sell our direct-to-consumer business. So excited about that.
By the way, that word drop is, I think, super important. And Jace, we could probably have a whole webinar on that. But, that drop model that has been so successful in the sneaker world and streetwear community, that idea of, creating these massive marketing moments around the drop of a collection or something new can really be something that drives a lot of business. So, Kristen, what about you? What's on your list for the holidays?
Yeah, so we have a new jersey dropping tomorrow. So definitely excited about that. So we'll be able to sell that for holiday, which we're pretty excited about. So.
All right, awesome. We'll look out for that. And Jace, what about you? What's up for the holidays?
Well, I'm excited for some holiday drops coming out. One is a bit innovative. We're doing a player collection that doesn't have any licensing marks on it, and it's being sold in Arena, which is very cool. Actually, like in the next few days, I have product delivering. It's like an NIL deal with an energy drink company that's working with a player from Duke, which is obviously at the highest level. So it's such a blessing being a part of that. And then we also signed a new licensing deal. So I have a lot of when I'm busy, that's what gets me excited. I'm sure you can see it. I'm very passionate. So that's what I look forward to. And then, of course, I have to mention it being with my family, of course.
Oh, there we go. All right, well, Nico, I know that there were some questions. I think we could open it up and see what the audience took away and wants to focus on.
Yeah, I actually had one from myself before we even get to the audience. There were two actually. One, since we're talking about drops, I wanted to get Jace's perspective just on, you mentioned having a runway for the Spurs, actually a runway project, but one of the things that some teams are really capitalizing on is this interaction that they have with the players now. And you see all of these opportunities for influencing outside of the stadium. You see an opportunity now, the runway has become the player getting off the bus, walking up to the stadium. You have these moments where you can showcase product. And I wanted to get Jace's perspective, and Kristen and Cristina as well. Those player relationships, how has it really evolved in the last couple of years?
Do you want me to take this first?
Please.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, first off, it's such a blessing getting recognized by your friends, peers, and of course, athletes. But like you said, they have a runway every single night they play, essentially, and that's generally from their car to the back of the arena. There are Instagram sites, websites, literally dedicated to what everybody's wearing. And the guys, just like in sports, they're competitive, and they're competitive with each other, and they want to come with, the freshest fit. And generally, what's really been incredible is that the fans notice that, and the fans like, the NBA and style, and same thing with the NFL and Major League Baseball. It's huge now. So if you can be capitalizing on some of those moments, sure, it could definitely lead to sales. Like, we were just a reference back about when we were talking about now the advantage of e-commerce. Well, if now consumers are able to find that product, it's amazing. Now, generally they're wearing more lifestyle product, but there are moments, and a lot of them do, like if another team, like let's say, I'm from New York, so let's take the Knicks, right? If the Rangers are in the playoffs, you could see somebody wearing a hockey jersey to the game to support like the Rangers. They also will rep their own team, which is a huge opportunity, as well to sell product. But what's crazy is that we used to, when we did projects with arenas or stadiums, we would say it's available only there, and we would leave like a phone number to like take an order, and it'd probably just go straight to their like store. And now with, like we said, the ability to look it up online and buy it, and then generally that's an opportunity too when you get a customer that obviously is a fan of not only the team but a player who has a deep connection. Then they're going to buy it. So you're able to display your marketing, whether it be photo, video, and I know tons of brands, obviously take that very seriously. You have the ability to even further that story with the customer and even draw on more of an attachment. So yeah, it's an amazing experience, because not only do people like want the product the players wearing, but they also are being given an opportunity to learn about your other offerings as well.
Yeah. And developing that manufactured scarcity. We were talking about drops with some of these exclusive collaborations. You really have an opportunity.
Product. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Product that way for sure.
And I'm glad Kristen mentioned open to buy, because one of the things that we really like to see here at Management One is how our clients utilize open to buy planning and those available dollars to really pivot, whether it's positive or negative. We talked about player relationships and maximizing risk and opportunity. When a player is traded, for example, there isn't often a runway to plan for that. Matt mentioned planning out 12 months in advance. When Christian McCaffrey goes to the 49ers, for example, there's a slim window to plan for something like that, or Devontae Adams to the Raiders. It's something that if you have the available capital and you have the metrics to really plan for it, you can maximize that opportunity with the available dollars that you have. Kristen, I also didn't want to mention as well, I think when you started working with us, LeBron James was at the the peak at the Cavaliers. So really maximizing that opportunity and pivoting hard when he decides to leave. I think that's also a huge opportunity that you have when you follow the metrics that you're looking at.
Yeah, that was definitely a big change. And I've also been on the side of where at the trade deadline I had 7 players left in one day. Talk about having no jerseys in your store. That's what happened the next day. But yeah, I think that that's something that's very unpredictable that no one can obviously plan for. But I think that the best thing you can do is obviously, just look at your open to buy, see what type of hit you're going to take and how can you make that back up. Can you sell the product at a discounted rate? So at least you're getting some cash back for it. And that's kind of our approach to it. It's better than getting nothing back for it. But I know some different businesses don't allow the sell of some of the product either. So I think it's just a matter of, working with your finance team on how to manage that inventory for things that are completely out of your control.
Absolutely. I wanted to get to a couple of questions here from the audience. Let's see, the first one here is actually from Carol Miller-Schaefer, former director of University of Tennessee. Carol, you decided to retire right before the team goes #1 on the charts. I don't know how you managed to do that one, but Carol is asking, how do you balance product mix and financials with customer expectations? So if you're a professional team or a top tier college team like Tennessee, there's a stronger expectation about what you should have in comparison to these larger stores that can be distributed easily nationally. So how do you really balance when customers can't understand why you don't have a product just based on your forecasted sales?
Can I take that one?
Please.
So I think every buyer probably does this a little bit differently, and it definitely depends on where you are, right, in the United States, because every team and every store is probably very different. But I will say that one of the things that has kind of worked to my advantage here is I kind of divide my business up into basic, essentials, and fashion. And the essential piece is typically a pretty big one in sports because it involves the sideline gear, which is typically a 6-month span, right? Well, what I've kind of learned, especially with Fanatics being involved, right, is that they have that entire assortment covered. I've kind of decreased that business as a percent to total. And I work with the equipment team to only go after what specifically they are going to be wearing on the sideline. And I've started to expand the fashion. And I've really tried to focus on what the exclusive product, right? Exclusive product that we can, utilize that our competitors won't be selling, different silhouettes that we can utilize with other brands, right? That maybe we can put, a different logo on, right? So that Fanatics won't have it, so that we can really kind of cater to our audience in a way that they can't, and kind of open up that fashion bucket a bit more. And honestly, I didn't really kind of think through that until I got to the Raiders. I wasn't necessarily doing that with the Bulls and the Blackhawks. So I don't know if that will help in any way, but I do think that's kind of allowed us to see some stronger results from a sales standpoint here in Las Vegas.
Love that. I had one here for, he didn't actually ask it live, but JT Thomas sent this to me via email right before the session started, more for Jace. JT was asking, being an artist with images and patterns, how can one connect with a sports team or one of these athletes' brands without having their ideas stolen?
Well, as far as having ideas, I mean, the team stealing the ideas?
Potentially, yeah.
It definitely can happen. I'll say that, but hopefully you're dealing with good people and they're not. I mean, of course you could make somebody sign an NDA, but generally I don't do that at all as far as with designs. I think people are respectful for the most part, and when they look at your designs, respect you, so they're not going to completely, I guess, knock you off. But as far as getting in touch with sports franchises, I guess like, because people have asked me this question before, so I think like the best way maybe to like at least get an email or something like that, if you ask respectfully, is maybe even LinkedIn. If you don't have the network that you're in like the sports space already. As everybody knows, good things definitely can come from that. So I'm not shying away from that. But personal relationships, of course, are really important in all businesses. So, that's obviously key. And again, when you put a lot of effort in, you have wins, generally people speak. So hopefully that spreads a little bit.
And I would probably say also it's about being on to what's next. So, you have the pulse of what's coming up next. So, you're ready to deliver that next, next trend, next fashion, next kind of what's on the pulse when you're ready to strike. And we had one more question that Kristen, I'll throw this to you. And this comes from Rosie. And the question really is, how are you out there discovering new product? Where are you kind of going and looking for new inspiration, new product, new assortments?
Yeah, so in the non-COVID days, we were able to go to more trade shows, right? So I'm actually excited to be able to do that again this year. But honestly, like a lot of it comes from just kind of looking through what fans are wearing on game days. So kind of what's selling, what the different demographics are kind of wearing to games, so we can kind of align our assortment in that way to be a little bit more fashion forward. And then also say social media. I think that's such a big thing. If you're looking at influencers throughout your community, what are they into and how can you tap into them? I think that's that's a whole nother conversation. We could go on about marketing, but I think that's just a really big piece of it that, what brands are they wearing? How can you work with your suppliers to do something similar from a licensing standpoint? I think that it takes a little bit of work to kind of get what you're looking for, but it's out there. And you just really have to adapt to that.
That's actually a great segue into the next question that just came through here. So Brian Wright at Tennessee as well. We touched on it briefly, and we could probably do a whole webinar based on NIL in college, but Brian was asking, since the NIL is growing so rapidly at the college level, is that changing any thought at the professional level about what will be bought and sold based on the velocity in college?
Matt, do you have any insight there?
Well, it's interesting because to me, the whole NIL just allows student athletes to now be an influencer and get paid for, promoting. I think with professional sports, it's different because there hasn't been that barrier. I think where the opportunity is in college with the NIL is really seeing if there's an ability to partner with any of those student athletes and create collections and create new opportunities to sell in those retail environments that wasn't there before. Where on the professional sports side, you can work with licensees, you can create player specific products, and there isn't those barriers. So I actually feel there's a huge opportunity to collaborate with student athletes. Now, it probably will take some work because the buyers will need to really work with that student athlete. A lot of times now, these student athletes have agencies that are actually managing their NIL deals. So I think it's really finding those opportunities within those environments and create some cool product that would support the student athlete that wasn't there before.
Absolutely. That was actually our final question here, and we are at the hour. And I know we could probably continue this conversation for another full hour and dive into some of these topics here. There were a couple of questions that were more one-to-one nature, just based on industry opportunities. So Cristina, Kristen, Jace, Matt, if you don't mind, I'll reach out to you via email with a couple of the follow-up questions there. But I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. And if you're still curious about what it is that Management One provides from a planning level, how we impact the pro sports level, the college team level, please feel free to reach out to us at info@management-1.com, and we would be more than happy to run through a lot more under the hood metrics on what it is that we provide for particular retailers. And Dane, thank you so much for facilitating the conversation. I think this was an excellent way to finish off 2022. And I'm excited for all of our clients and partners to see what's in store for 2023. I'm sure we'll be back here again halfway through the year, if not towards the end, discussing what's going to be on the horizon next. So thank you all so much. And this has been recorded, so we will be distributing a recording if anyone had to leave early. But until the next one, onwards and upwards.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And thank Jace. Thanks for teaching me. I got to work on my fit. So
I think you did.
thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.